News reporting is a young man's job. For the reporter must have stamina and endurance to withstand the strain of long and strenuous hours of work. He must have the courage and perseverance to get the story in spite of obstacles. The qualifications of a newspaper worker are not easy ones to fill. All this knowledge and experience seems a great deal to ask of one man, and there aren't many of them.
I grew up in an era in which the world changed dramatically. Civil rights movement, women's rights, demands for equality, marches on campuses, protests against the war in Vietnam. I saw that people who used their voice could change the path of history, and I recognized the role of journalists in helping to ensure that those voices got heard.
If you look at least my generation of journalists, and I think probably those behind me, and you ask people why they got into journalism, it's that they wanted to make the world a better place.
Fall in love with the ability to, change the world, or at least think you can change the world. And, it's the old comfort the afflicted and afflict the comfortable kind of thing that I found appealing and still find appealing.
Journalism was suddenly becoming respectable again, in large part because of the coverage of Watergate by the Washington Post. But newsrooms became energized and catalyzed in the early 70s. Again, some of it was Watergate, some of it was the new respect that reporters had, the new sense that newspapers had that they had an important role to play in the community. There was a time when people lived and breathed journalism more so than they do right now. But that was just as I was getting started.
If you visit the newsroom of a daily paper, you will find it very similar to any busy office. The newsroom is the heart of a newspaper.
To me, it's hard to imagine many places like it. I mean, I'm sure everybody thinks that their workplace has something that's unique about it. And I think that's true. Loggers, timbermen, who gather at the camp in the morning and have a cup of coffee before they go out. They think that's really unique, and it's true. The trading floor of the stock exchange, that's an amazing workplace. Newsrooms were unique.
I mean, when I started as a young reporter, I graduated from college in 1978. Started working for the Inquirer right away. We wrote our stories on typewriters. We had rotary telephones. There was no searchable databases. We got all our information from folded up newspaper clippings in newspaper morgues. And so in the course of one career, I've gone from that to computers, to the internet, to Twitter, Facebook, and the changes keep coming at warp speed.
I haven't walked into a newsroom at 8 o'clock at night in a while, but I'd be willing to bet that a photograph of what any Philadelphia Inquirer, Atlanta Journal-Constitution, Chicago Tribune, or even the Des Moines Register, or the Jackson Clarion Ledger, or the Indianapolis Star, if you took a photograph of what those newsrooms were like 20 years ago at 8 p.m., and you took a picture of them now, you would see just a completely different image. Newsrooms worked late. They were pushing for later deadlines despite delivery problems that could cause, and they weren't worried about it because they wanted to get the late scores. They wanted immediacy. Now they have the internet that sort of can provide that, and I think that there's just sort of, my guess is that newsrooms sort of shut down on the news watch a little earlier than they used to.
And because stockholders have expected significant profits from media companies, there has been a lot of slashing, a lot of cost reduction in order to maintain a strong profit margin.
I think as newspapers a lot of newspapers are basically going down and downsizing dramatically. I see a lot of people leaving and not ending particularly happily. I mean, everybody misses it.
You're seing people laid off. A paper is all over the country and at broadcast outlets, radio stations.
It's been massive departure from newsrooms of good people, great journalists who weren't ready to quit, weren't ready to leave, who had terrific institutional memories, and who loved their jobs.
Most people leave under duress and have real misgivings about leaving and really wonder about whether they're going to find the same happiness they found in journalism.
You know, it's not uncommon to hear journalists who leave newsrooms now saying it's just not fun anymore.
Amid the turmoil and confusion, the reporter must be able to think clearly and quickly, and he must get his facts accurately. But there's a real thrill in seeing your own byline over a story when it's in print. And there's always the feeling that you'll try to make the next story just a little better.
But I don't lose too much sleep about that. I think the world wants news. I think the world wants fair news. They want thorough news. They want journalists to know what the hell they're writing about.
The nonpartisan, fair, responsible, accurate content that we create and other quality news organizations create will be more valuable than ever. And I think it's more valuable than ever now. I mean, the business model is still catching up with the value of our content. More people consume our content now than ever.
I think America's news media are about to turn the corner. Instead of getting beat up by the new technology, I think they're going to exploit it for a very positive end.
Yeah, I'm not at all believing it won't come back to that same sort of high energy newsroom, conscientious reporting, late hours, but on a different platform, not print. Journalists have, from the beginning of time, challenged conventional wisdom, have resisted the temptation to believe what everyone else believed, and who have seen themselves as representing the public interest. And that sounds awfully high and mighty, but it's absolutely true.
A lot of us hope that there will be a pendulum swing and a recognition that the people who are the greatest value to us in the workplace are the most informed, are the smartest, are the most engaged in their communities. And these are people who use what we have called traditional media. These are people who read newspapers and check out websites put together by authoritative news organizations. Being smart should be a good thing. Being informed should be a great thing. And so far, it hasn't caught on. I mean, you don't hear in a lot of job interviews people say, well, did you read the front page of your newspaper today? I always ask that question, but that's because I ran a newspaper.
I'm most excited about winning the war and surviving, which I'm convinced we're going to do. And so will a lot of other newspapers. I think the hardest part of my job now is just trying to convince people that we really can, succeed, with the staffing levels we have now, and that requires, us to act a little differently and execute, a slightly different kind of journalism. But that if we do that. And if we believe in our ability to do that, we can remain as dominant as ever.